Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining this session. Today, we're going to be talking about accelerating data science for customer insights. I'm your host today. I'm going to be your speaker for this session. I'm Pam Asghar, and I lead our data science practice at Ironside. I'm going to spend just one slide quickly telling you a little bit about who Ironside is, and then we are going to jump into talking about where the banking industry is deploying data science and advanced analytics. I'm going to talk about some of the challenges that every organization faces trying to get there, and how data science as a service can help you overcome some of those challenges. We're going to talk a bit about data and some of the challenges with data and where third-party data can be valuable. So I will introduce a partner that we work with, Precisely, and some of the location intelligence data that we found really valuable for data science solutions. And then I'll give you a little bit of just walk through of our rapid viability assessment, which is a great place to get started if you haven't yet. So you can jump into this. I just want to take a moment and explain who Ironside is. We're a Boston-based consultancy. We specialize in data warehousing, visualizations, dashboards, reporting, and then data science, and that's where I come in. And across those three areas, we offer design, build, deploy, and governance. And we also have managed services and advisory services. So just a little bit of who we are and why we're here today. And before I jump in too much, I also want to let you know that you can, if you have questions, type them up in the chat box, and I'll try to keep an eye on that and address them throughout or at the end. So at any time, if you'd like to put them in, we can discuss those. I'll try to hold 5 minutes at the end for some questions. The other thing I like to do before I get started into too much of the weeds is to just level set everybody on terminology. You know, we all come from different backgrounds. I talk to a lot of business leaders and executives and people kind of across the organization. Not everyone really understands the difference between predictive analytics and machine learning and AI. And the reality is that you can get a group of data scientists together and we're all going to have slightly different definitions of these things anyway. And the truth is, it doesn't matter. You know, all of these terms that you see in front of you, they all represent a step beyond traditional analytics to using advanced statistical approaches to get you deeper insight about your business. And so for our purpose of discussion, I don't want you to worry too much about the fact that I'll say machine learning over here and predictive analytics over here and AI over here. We're really talking about the same thing and taking this deeper plunge through some more advanced methodology. So now that we all feel comfortable with the terminology and my use of flip-flopping back and forth between them, let's talk about the banking industry. And the first question I want to address is the banking industry using AI and machine learning? The answer is absolutely yes, overwhelmingly. It's one of the industries at the top of AI adoption where we see it evolving the most. And that can be great if you are newer to AI, if you're in the banking industry and you really haven't taken the plunge into machine learning yet. The great thing about this is that people have already laid that foundation. They've discovered what use cases are really the most valuable. They've discovered how to get started. There's off-the-shelf solutions for specific use cases that the groundwork is laid. So that's great. On the other hand, if you haven't taken that plunge yet, your competitors probably have, right? And that might give you a bit of angst and anxiety over the fact that you're in one of the areas where AI adoption is growing the fastest and haven't really taken that plunge just yet. So we're going to talk about how we can get you there without really having to invest too heavily up front and hire a team of 30 data scientists and have a lot of capital expense. So we'll get there. Every expert really seems to agree that the banking leaders of the future really have to think about their data and analytics and focus on that. The three things that are going to set them apart is the use and monetization of the data that they have, mass personalization, and building AI-led personalization and interactions. So some of the use cases we'll talk about are really going to fit right into that. These are the finance organizations that are really leading the effort today, and not just the effort in AI, but really are the global leaders. So let's look at some examples where we're finding success with machine learning and AI in the banking industry. Pretty much all machine learning AI comes down to three big goals, right? There's a few others, but most of it comes down to increasing revenue, reducing risk, and reducing costs. Really, most of it can fit into those three buckets. So I wanted to look at an example of each of these. First of all, we have Wells Fargo, one of the first to use chatbots. Love them or hate them, chatbots really are effective, and they're accurate, more accurate than sometimes people think from individual experience across the board. They are quite accurate. They're fast. They keep people from sitting on hold. They reduce labor costs. So they've been very successful and effective at customer retention and therefore increased revenue. So Wells Fargo's had a lot of success with that and kind of driving that plunge of providing some personalized service through chatbots. Citibank has used AI to reduce costs by combating fraud. Really, this is a very expensive issue, right? So one study suggests that an institution has to increase their cost by almost $3 for every $1 of fraud, right? And AI is particularly a good fit for combating fraud in these issues. And then JP Morgan. I think these use cases of document classification are sometimes the less sexy and exciting ones, but really the ones that get the biggest bang for the buck in terms of saving dollars. There's a lot of logistical applications of AI. So they took a really smart approach and used AI to classify documents. You can use NLP to classify the type of document, the content in it, whether there's private or sensitive content in it, and store all that information. So what that does is it drastically reduces labor costs and speeds up those transactions drastically. So big savings there for what I think is probably not what people instantly think of when they think of AI, right? Chatbots, people think of computer vision, image detection, but document classification probably isn't at the top of your list when you think of AI, but again, very successful. So these examples, they're great. People are saving a lot of money or increasing revenue by applying machine learning and AI. But these are the big banks, right? And they have the ability to throw money at large teams of data scientists and cutting edge technology and setting things up. So what about the smaller banks, small and mid-sized companies? I want to talk about some examples where they're doing very parallel things, right? They're finding ways to personalize customer service, not necessarily through chatbots, but through other ways that increase revenue and reduce costs and reduce risk as well. So this is a community bank in Arkansas. What they did was they wanted to provide personalized service, want to be able to send offers and campaigns to their customers that are most appropriate for that specific offer, right? So instead of your marketing spend being across a very large group of prospects, you can reduce that drastically, but it's a targeted group where you have the highest percentage of people that are appropriate for that specific tool. So they use machine learning to do this, to customize their offers for certain products. And they actually had an 89% acceptance rate for one of their programs, which is crazy high and very successful. And again, that's just a community bank. This example, again, similar to the Citibank example of using AI for fraud. They used it to predict and prevent ransomware. Again, another very expensive venture, so a lot of opportunity to reduce costs here. And their quote was that if you don't have something like this implemented, you probably should. And this last example, again, kind of the logistics and documentation example, a local New York City bank used AI to monitor and manage the CDFI status. So they needed to provide a certain proportion of their mortgages to low-income individuals. So they were able to optimize that while also still providing competitive rates and protecting their risk. So they used machine learning to optimize that. So again, very parallel and similar examples, but these are not organizations that have large data science teams or that have machine learning technology in-house. What these organizations are doing are taking advantage of partners that are out there that can help do this for them. So they can lease a data science team and they can use their tech stack and they can find a partner they trust to help guide them through this process and bring them success. And that way they can keep their costs low while also competing with these very large banks who are kind of a step ahead. So whether the organization is big or small or somewhere in the middle, they are going to hit the same challenges when they want to progress their AI roadmap, right? This survey I follow a lot by O'Reilly. Every year, these top 5 things come to the top. I used to find it very surprising that the #1 issue that people cite as a bottleneck for AI adoption is company culture. It's not the fact that they don't have data scientists or technology or data issues. It's that their own group doesn't understand how to use AI, what would be the benefit, and they're not driving for it, right? And that and the second one are intertwined. The ability to identify use cases, you need to know what AI is and what the benefit is. And so that's really easily addressed by education. And by bringing in somebody who can help with your AI strategy and help you understand what those use cases are and how you could go about implementing them. And then the rest comes down to not having data scientists, having some data issues, and not having the technology, which are pretty more expected. So as I said, smaller and mid-sized organizations are looking to partners, right, to help them overcome these challenges. And we often call this data science as a service. So Ironside has a data science as a service approach we call Ascend AI, and it is purpose-built to help you get past those challenges that I just cited on the previous page. This solution is designed to be cost-effective, not lock you into anything long-term. It's meant to be flexible. So the IP is yours. Later, if you are finding success through this and you decide to build your own tech stack, that's great. We can help you lift and shift. Again, this isn't about black boxing anything. This is about de-risking the process, protecting your investment, and getting you success with AI much more quickly than you would if you tried to stand up your own tech stack, right? You're going to be bound by a lot of those challenges we just saw. So what we do with Ascend AI is break it into modules. So you just take this a step at a time. Maybe you don't even know what your use cases are. So we have a use case discovery module that we can help with that. Other organizations come in and say, we're really struggling with this specific problem, so we know where we want to start. And we would start with what we call a rapid viability assessment. So that's 3 weeks to look at the data and evaluate the data quality, the data quantity, the statistical signal in there, and make sure that it's worth you pursuing machine learning and advanced analytics for. So at each step, there's a gate, right? So you're not investing in hiring data scientists and licenses for technology. You're just taking a step at a time to see if machine learning and AI is right for your organization, if your data is ready for it. Once we get to machine learning and we build that model and we identify that it has the proper, the accuracy level that you're looking for and potential ROI, then we can go into building that and implementing it into your business, right? So you're actually automating it and getting value. Now, some organizations don't actually move on to AI implementation. I'm going to talk a little bit about some customer insights analytics that we do that are really about performing the advanced analytics that takes place there in that machine learning module and getting insight out of that. So what's the profile of a customer that's going to churn? What's the profile of customers that resonate with a specific message? What are the different types of customers in my that I have in my business, my book of business? So sometimes you don't even need to go on and automate anything and have it running. You're just looking for advanced analytics to provide you some deeper insight about your business. Those that do move on to AI implementation are going to be monitored long-term, right? So we have solutions deployed on Ascend AI, and we track the model accuracy, make sure that it's not declining or drifting over time, and we retrain it and tune it on a regular basis so that it stays at top performance. So again, this is about getting you speed to value, avoiding upfront fixed costs, de-risking the AI process for you and your investment, being minimally invasive to what you have going on in your infrastructure currently, and letting you keep this IP, right? If we built this on your infrastructure, it would be your IP, and that's really what we're trying to do, is just get you there faster. So I said at the beginning of that last slide that it's purpose-built to overcome these challenges. And I think, it's pretty clear how we address skilled people and the technology. We have a team of data scientists, data engineers, solution architects, experienced designers, right? And you're not paying those salaries long-term. You can just pay for what you need at that specific time. And we've got the technology, we go cloud and cost-effective tools. so that you have the benefit of those cutting edge tools as well. I haven't talked too much about the use case discovery session, but we do have that module and that methodology that really helps to extract all the use cases across your organization and prioritize those on business value and the data viability. And we've discovered that this process actually helps to build that company culture. It educates the businesses about how AI can help their specific business and help them reach their specific goals. And it really does help them kind of understand that and be on board for driving AI adoption within their organization. So what I haven't talked about too much is data, because one of the things you're going to say is, yeah, but if my data is not good enough, it's just not good enough, and I don't have enough data. Well, Ascend AI can address that in a couple of ways. One, very early on, right before you hire a team of data scientists or any technology, right away, we're going to look at the data quality in that rapid viability assessment. We're going to look at the quality and the quantity and any gaps that you may have. So you're going to know very early on whether your data is ready or not. And the other way is that we can look at where your data might be strong and where it could be supplemented by external data, right? And so we can provide that as well. So let's talk about data for just a second. Because we hear this a lot. We hear we don't have big data, so we can't do AI, because I think there's some misconceptions sometimes on how much data you need to run these analytics, and it gets a bit inflated. And I hear a lot, you know, we're 2 years away, our data's just not ready yet. It's maybe in several different systems, or we don't think it's clean enough, or there's just not enough of it yet. So let's talk about data and how much we really need and what we mean by data quantity. If you look at this little icon in the middle, it's just meant to represent a flat file, like an Excel file, right? Where the rows are your customers or accounts or transactions, and the columns represent attributes about those customers or transactions. And so when people think about having enough data and how much data they need, they're very often thinking about this vertical dimension. I need more customers, more transactions, more whatever. I don't have enough of that for you to do analytics. And it's true that we do need a certain number of examples, because the machine learning model is going to try to learn from these examples. It's going to try to learn, when I see this pattern of attributes, that means you know, a customer is going to default on a loan. When I see this pattern, it's not, and it needs enough of those examples to kind of distinguish between them. But once you get enough examples and the model's going to learn it, having more and more and more examples doesn't really help. So you see this curve where your model accuracy could go up the more examples you give it, but at some point it's going to plateau. And that plateau comes earlier than people think. You know, the model's not going to learn more from giving it more of kind of the same information over and over. So when we get to that point and we kind of confirm there's enough basic examples, and by the way, there's no magic number. People often say, how many customers do I have to have? It's, you know, very specific on the situation, but it's probably a much smaller number than you might think. Then we turn to look at this other dimension. And this is a really critical dimension, because these columns here are information about your customers or about the loans that you have. These are things like, you know, their total assets with you, their banking patterns with you, products that they have. And the more information you have, the more information you're feeding a model. If you think about a model as, you know, you trying to become an expert on a topic, and you're given one book to become an expert, right? You can read that book over and over a number of times. You're going to get as smart as you can get about it. Now, if I give you a lot of other books that have new information, deeper, more ideas about it, you're going to be able to know more and more, and you're going to get much better at talking about that topic, understanding it, and differentiating it from other situations. It's a little bit vague. I'll give you a more concrete example in a second. But the idea is, when we look at your data, yes, we're going to look at quantity, make sure you have enough kind of basic examples, but we're going to look at these columns here. We're going to say, do you have the information that this model needs to distinguish between loans that will default and loans that won't? Or customers that are right for one product and not another, or customers that would respond to text messages versus direct mail. And if you don't, you can get that. And that's where we're going to talk about third-party data and data enrichment. You can supplement that from external data. So here's one example. If we want to do some personalized marketing, like we saw at the beginning, Wells Fargo did this with chatbots, but there was a much smaller bank that used machine learning to identify which of their customers were appropriate for different products, and then were able to target a much smaller group with marketing campaigns. So say we want to do this with home improvement loans. You're going to look at your database and find maybe in the past you've sent out some campaigns for home improvement loans. Some of your customers accepted it and some of them didn't. And you can use machine learning to look through all the attributes about that customers and learn how to differentiate those that got a loan or applied for it and those that didn't, right? But think about those columns and thinking about adding to that dimension. Externally, if you could add in information about the age of the home that they live in that might not currently live in your database. Excuse me, the age and condition of the roof, the size of the home and land, the neighborhood demographics, the neighborhood market values and trends. Is this an up and coming neighborhood where, you know, more and more people are flipping houses or improving them and renovating them? This is all information that you could add to a model. So the idea is, given your what you have in your database, what you have about your customers, that kind of transactional data and information, you can probably build a model that could distinguish who's right for what different products and different offers. And maybe you can hit 70-75% accuracy. You bring in additional data, you can get that much more precise. You can add to it because you're giving the model more information and ability to learn. It gets very powerful. We often partner with Precisely to do this. They are a global leader of data integrity, and we go to Precisely because of two things. One is they have a massive catalog of data available, so it's kind of a one-stop shop. Look to them for demographic data, crime data, property attributes, flood, fire risk, social media data, purchasing patterns, a number of other things. So like I said, kind of a one-stop shop for data that I'm looking for to bring in and add to clients' models. The other thing is they're the leader in data integrity. So bringing in external data is really tricky. Internally, you've got keys to identify different entities and join them together. Externally, the world doesn't match up to your database very clearly. Often we're trying to join an address, which is notoriously messy data. So Precisely has a great way of cleansing addresses and geocoding so that when you do line data up, it's much more precise and accurate. Pun not intended, I just tend to say precisely, which is probably why they picked the term, right? Because they have this ability to be very precise when you join their data in. So just a couple of examples real quick. These aren't exactly banking examples, but just shows the power of the data enrichment. So on the left here, I was building a model for a utility company that wanted to identify when damage to the utility assets was likely. So what are the high risk dig sites and where should we go and put some auditors on site to help prevent that damage. So we built that model with their internal data, information about the excavator and the purpose of the dig. But when we added in some location intelligence data from Precisely about the property and the traffic patterns and a number of other things, we were able to identify 25% more of those damages in that model. So that really helped them to be kind of upfront, to be preventative, to be on site, and also to optimize where they deployed these auditors who are expensive resources, right? You want to put them on site at the places that are actually high risk. So that was really helpful. The other example here was an insurance company for general liability trying to look for which claims are likely to go really high in loss, like over $500,000. Again, we applied some of Precisely's data about the claimants and were able to identify 27% more of those high loss claims at the time the claim was submitted. So really powerful additions to the data by using external data. I just want to take a step back for a second and think about the use cases in banking. Now that we know that you don't have to be kind of chained down by lack of skilled people, lack of technology, and even some of your data issues, because we can fill those gaps. As you look through this list of questions, and I won't read through them all to you, but as you look through them, these might be questions that you ask yourselves and that you're looking for your data to help you out with. These are the types of questions that machine learning can actually provide a lot of deep insight to. And I said at the beginning, when people think about machine learning and AI, they're thinking chatbots and computer vision and image detection, right? But who are my most valuable customers? Which of my customers are at risk of not being my customer 6 months from now? How do I address that? How do I understand who my customers are and put the products in front of them that are right for them? How do I personalize that approach for them? These are all very common applications of machine learning in banking, in insurance, in retail. And so within Ascend AI, by using our technology and our resources, we can provide answers to those kind of questions. We call this our customer insights package. These are just a few examples of that kind of methodology where we can use the advanced analytics methodology to answer those questions. So customer segmentation, who are my customers? And the great thing about customer segmentation is once you perform this data-driven approach to understanding types of customers, you can use those types as inputs to other models, and you can use them to understand a number of things. Once you know you've got a group that are really all about convenience, and a group that's all about following a routine, and a group that loves technology and they want the latest and greatest, you can then understand, how do I market to them differently? What are the messages that resonate with them differently? What are the products that they're going to need? It just helps you kind of across the board. So segmentation is often kind of a baseline first step approach to really getting customer insights. And then there's the personalized marketing, right? Using machine learning to, again, kind of segment your customer base and your prospects to understand who's most likely to respond to a campaign offer, who's most likely to respond to which types of messages, but also through which marketing channels, right? And on the bottom, customer churn, getting some early insight into customers that may not be your customers 6 months from now. So you can be really proactive in preventing them from leaving. And then lookalike models. This is a great application of third-party data, because if you build this all with third-party data, you can identify your most valuable customers. What are the patterns in demographics or third-party data that are associated with them, and apply that model to prospects so that you can look at different markets and different groups of prospect customers and identify where there's the highest density of those customers. Or you can think about direct mail or email campaigns or text message campaigns and really be able to target those down. Who are the people out there that not just look like my customers, but my best customers? And that's a really great application of third-party data. So if you're looking through all of this and thinking, yes, my organization really does need to start looking into machine learning. We're not really sure where to start. The rapid viability assessment is a great place to do that. You can contact us at helloai@ironside.com. 3-week assessment, understand, your data quality, quantity, the statistical signal there. Let's look at some third-party data. What are the gaps? And how do we get you from there to actually building out some of these analytics and getting value from them very quickly? So I will summarize, and again, then if you have any questions, I think I just have a couple minutes, but happy to answer them. Key takeaways here: machine learning and AI, it's being adopted in every area of banking. Banking and finance are areas that are top of the line in AI adoption, moving very quickly. The big banks are investing heavily, but smaller banks are still competing by finding partners that they trust to help them out with this through data science as a service. Ironside has that offering that I introduced, Ascend AI, help you get started in a low-risk way and low cost. We talked about data, how big data is not necessary for machine learning, right? We've done some really powerful models and gotten some really powerful insight with, as few as, 400 or 500 customers in some cases. External data can be really powerful because sometimes it's not about the number of customers, it's about the richness of that. It's about how much information you have to feed that model and to build it. And I'm giving some examples here of use cases in banking. We've talked about some of those already. Let me just take a quick look at questions, but I also first want to say thank you so much for joining today, and happy to have some follow-up conversations. And I'm glad that you joined the customer intelligence segment today. So I'm just going to take a quick look here. How do you effectively obtain customer insights in the data overload era? Yeah, when is it too much data, too much? You know, machine learning is a process, and sometimes it's about weeding out data that's not helpful. There are auto ML tools out there that can help in this, where you can dump a lot of features in and quickly weed out the ones that are just not going to be that helpful for you. Isolate the top ones. I've had models where we've created and generated 200 or 300 features and then built our final model with 12 of them, right? What are the most powerful things? So sometimes it's about finding very quick ways to weed out what you don't need, and then you know how to store, what to govern, and focus on the valuable data. So I think maybe that's what that question was about. I hope I answered that. And how much data is needed? What if you don't have enough data or data strategy? So almost so many of my customers, regardless of how much data they have, start the conversation with, we don't think we have enough data. And like I said, we've been able to do very powerful analytics with very small data sets. The other thing about data strategy is that sometimes data is not in a centralized data space. Sometimes it's scattered and dispersed across different platforms. Maybe you have a CRM, a POS system, an access database. Data scientists really don't need that high level, already prepared data. What we do is really going down to that nitty gritty raw and taking raw data and pulling together different data sources and finding insight out of it. That's really the bulk of what data science do, is that data wrangling and manipulation and gathering and joining. That's a hard part of data science, but it's what we're good at. So I really don't, I caution clients about using that as a reason to step away or avoid moving on, because there's a ton of valuable data out there. Great, so I don't see any other questions, but I thank you so much for joining today, and hope we can have some follow-up conversations.
Thank you, Pamela, joining us today for this wonderful session. So I ask our audience, if you have any questions, just visit the exhibitor booth. Ironside groups and their members are available to answer your other questions. Thank you very much for joining today.
Thank you.